Great. Hello and welcome to another sales chat. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM. And I'm joined by my colleague Nicole, who is also here in San Diego. She's just down the road from me. And our guest today is Jane Gentry, who is in Atlanta. Correct, Jane? Yeah.
And it is hot, Atlanta, 90 degrees today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's summer.
Yeah, exactly. And Jane has been working for over 25 years with Fortune 500 clients to help them grow revenue, solving key issues like process, client engagement, leadership, relationship management, etc. But what we were going to talk about today is another of our areas of expertise, and that is sales recruitment. So how to reduce sales churn by having a great hiring process. So if you haven't been on this before, the hashtag is hashtag SalesChats. So you can join in on Twitter, send us your comments, or when you review the video later. Again, feel free to comment. So Jane, right? Whenever I talk to pretty much anybody in business at management level, whether they're in marketing or sales and sometimes even executive management, hiring good salespeople is always an issue. Why is that?
People think it's like some voodoo, there's some mystery to it. It's a real crapshoot. It really isn't, but I will say I just finished the first draft of a white paper that's about to go up on our website about crafting really great B2B sales teams. And there's a manpower study that says not only is talent in general a big problem for organizations today. And yesterday I was with the National Association of Corporate Directors, so people on boards who are also very concerned about talent in their organizations. But the sales function is the number 3 most biggest talent shortage that we have right now. Wow. So it's not just normally kind of an issue for us. Today, it's a really big issue because we're struggling to find good salespeople. So great hiring process is even more important than ever.
So what are some of the steps then to setting up a really good hiring process to be able to evaluate and find and then actually close the right candidates? Because like I said, I have this conversation constantly with people and they really do struggle with it. So what are some of the key components?
Yeah, so the first thing you do, John, is send them our way.
Of course.
Okay, but after that, what I would say is, so there are a few things that I see that are kind of common mistakes that people make. One is, and I love HR. I love HR people. Most HR professionals are not equipped to hire salespeople. Mm-hmm. So hiring for sales is different from hiring for other roles in your organization. And so the first thing I would say is, whoever in your organization is hiring for sales should be trained in terms of how to hire great salespeople. So that's the first thing. Let's just not toss anybody in the pool and hope that they're going to know how to hire great salespeople. The second thing is understand the ways that you can early on assess candidates for their sales competencies. One of the mistakes that I see a lot of people make, and just this week was with a person who was telling me what assessment tool they use to vet salespeople, mm-hmm. and I just wanted to cry. So psychometric assessments, personality assessments, behavioral assessments, these are not effective tools for vetting salespeople and whether or not they can sell. So we have a particular tool that we like to use. I'm not here to sell you a tool. Whatever it is that you're using, find a tool that looks for sales competencies.
Right.
I don't care what your personality is, right? Okay. Keenan did a video not too long ago that I just wanted to give him a big hands, high five for, which is you don't have to be an outgoing person to be a great salesperson. Mm-hmm. So personality is not what we should be testing for when we're looking for salespeople? We need to be testing for sales competencies, and we can talk about more about that if you want to know what those are and what I think we should be shopping for. And then the other thing is, let's learn how to write and recruit in ways that attract the kinds of people that we want to hire. And by that, I mean, I see too many companies, if you go on LinkedIn or go on these job boards and you look at the descriptions that people put in there for hiring, it's too much about the company, the opportunity, right? There's no value prop about what we want from a seller, what the qualities are of that person, what the experiences are of that person. We're talking too much about ourselves. It's like the sales trap that we fall into all the time in selling. We're doing the same thing when we hire, right? We talk too much about ourselves. And so start to write these profiles or these ads, these posts in a way that talk to the seller about, what do you look like if you're a great fit for our company? Right. What are the experiences that you've had? What are the competencies, the skill sets that you have, right? And quit talking so much about ourselves. That tells me you got a sales organization that needs some help, right? Because you're writing your article the same way you're selling.
So just going back a moment to the first part you said about HR and training people, at least guiding them. What are some of the things that you need to train an HR person on? Because as you say, you're correct. There's very few, if any, ex-salespeople in HR, right?
Yeah, right.
So what do you need? What are some of the things you need to train them on so that at least they can be the first level of screening?
Yep. So we want them to understand why salespeople are different. First, just got to buy into the concept, right? Secondly, we want them to understand how to craft an ad or recruit in a way that attracts top salespeople. We want them to understand what tools they should use to early on weed out candidates that are not going to be good candidates for your organization. So we don't even have the first phone call with somebody who's not a great candidate for our organization. We want them to understand how to interview for a salesperson, right? What are the things that we want to look for? What are the ways that, what are the kinds of activities that we want them to do in a first conversation or in an interview? We want them to be sure to get everybody who has anything to do with the hiring process with those good candidates early on in the process, right? So, and then to wrap the whole thing up, we want you to have a 90-day onboarding process now. Before you even put the ad in the paper, do you know how you are going to onboard these sellers?
Right.
And it's not a 30-day onboarding. It's a minimum of a 90-day onboarding into your organization, right?
And I think in most organizations, I mean, you don't really know what a salesperson is like till at least 3 months, maybe 6 months, so that onboarding. So here's another interesting thing. This is what I want to come back to, the assessment piece, because I think somebody said the other day to me that if some salespeople could sell as well as they sell when they're getting the job, or when they're telling or when they're telling their manager why something isn't coming in this month. So it is a really hard thing, because let's face it, at a very basic level, a salesperson should be able to sell themselves. So you've got to dig deeper, right? So tell me a little bit more about the tools, because you say they need to be competency based. So explain that a little more.
Yeah, so there are 25 competencies that we test for when we are helping customers, but we don't recruit, by the way. But we do help companies understand how to recruit for salespeople and train them and give them the tools that they need to do that, right? There are 25 competencies that we test for salespeople. And here's what we care about when we're looking at a seller for a company. Can you sell? Will you sell? That is a completely different question, right? And are you going to last at that company long enough, John, for that employer to make 10x on what it costs them to recruit, hire, train, onboard, all of that. Mm-hmm. So we look to see, do we have a salesperson who can sell? Do we have a salesperson who will sell? And are they going to be there long enough for you to make money on them? Most organizations have about a 25% churn rate in sales. Mm-hmm. That's horrific, right? If you had that in any other part of your organization, you'd get fired. Mm-hmm. It's just not acceptable in any other part of an organization. So we test for these competencies like emotional, not emotional intelligence, emotional control, right? Oh, yeah. We know in a negotiating situation or a sales situation, the person who manages their emotions the best wins, right? So we're looking for salespeople who can manage their emotions. Can they talk about money? What is a big dollar amount to them, right? What's their tolerance for talking about money? What is their buying cycle? What I mean by that is you and I have a particular way that we buy things. Mm-hmm. I'm a really good shopper, so I'm probably got a totally different thing than you, right? But
I'm a pretty decent shopper.
Are you? We'll take that offline. Okay. Yeah. But we have behaviors when we shop. So if I am a price shopper or a comparison shopper, mm-hmm. I'm likely to tolerate that bad behavior from a client. So we try to understand what is the buy cycle of the salesperson, because that starts to tell us what is the behavior that they will or will not tolerate from a customer. Do they have an extraordinarily high need to be liked? Yeah. And this is different from can they handle rejection?
Sure.
Right? If I have a very high need to be liked, I am likely not asking great questions. I'm not asking enough questions, and I'm probably giving away margin because I'm too far on the side of the buyer's side of the table, right? And then in addition to that, we look at competencies around, are you a hunter? How do you qualify? Do you have a milestone-centric process that you use to sell, right? Not just do you present well, when do you present in the buy cycle? In the sales process. Do you present too early, right? Do you have that closer competency? And these things work very, they're very kind of integrated with each other, because there have been times when I'll look at an assessment with a client and they'll go, oh my gosh, Jane, this guy looked great until the closing competency, he's got like a 20. Yeah, that's terrible. And I go, yeah, but guess what? Who cares? Look at how hot he is all the way through the process. He doesn't need to close. He closed every way along the sales process.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So it's a combination of, as I said, there are 25 of them, but they're very sales specific things that we measure for so that we knock out people that are not good candidates early, first thing we do in the sales process.
Yeah, you touched on something there a little bit ago about churn, right? And the ridiculously high rates of churn. And I would say in a lot of organizations, 25% in sales is probably low. There's probably more like 50 or 70%. I mean, some people even practically turn over their whole company, their whole sales organizations yearly. So that's a huge expense in terms of time, resource, focus, obviously, and money, and lost opportunity costs. So what are some of the big mistakes that are made in sales recruiting? Because, the downside of all that lost money, time, opportunity is massive.
Yeah, we actually have a calculator that we let companies use to figure out exactly what they have blown in bad hires. Mm-hmm. And they're usually pretty horrified by the number. So, wow, I should have just given you this white paper I'm writing, because you're starting to hit on some of these things. So a couple things. One is stop trying to hire for the perfect salesperson. Mm-hmm. There is no perfect salesperson, right? I think
no perfect person, period, right?
Right. I think sales leaders need to get more serious about being people developers. Mm-hmm. They try too hard to get the very perfect salesperson. There is no such animal. And then we churn them out of our organization rather than getting a really awesome salesperson who can be developed and being committed to an ongoing development process inside your organization. So that's one thing that comes to mind. The other thing is when we get these bad hires inside our organization, and we tend to hang on to them way too long. Part of what I'm writing in this article is a study out of Aberdeen. And what they studied very specifically was how long do we hang on to top performers who are toxic to our culture?
Yeah.
And what happens when we cut them loose? What happens when we have the courage to cut loose of a toxic salesperson who's a high performer? And that, you know, our instinct would tell us, wow, we're really going to lose revenue, right? We're going to lose top line revenue, which is why leaders are afraid to do it. But the exact opposite is true.
Right.
The exact opposite is true.
That's fascinating, because that is a real kind of issue that a lot of organizations experience, and I've seen it myself.
We spend way too much time being held hostage by poor salespeople, toxic salespeople in our organization, and those are the people we should be churning, and we're not, right?
Yeah.
So I think part of it is a hiring thing, John, but part of it is we got to get real about it's hard to find good talent. When you do, they're not perfect, right?
Yeah.
So you have to have a good combination in your organization of great hiring and great developing.
Yeah, and there's also there's a bit of the warm body syndrome too, isn't there? Where you prefer, sometimes people prefer to have like a warm body in the job rather than have it, as an open position. And you think like, if I just fill it, miraculously that person will bring in something, when in fact they're probably a net loss to you.
Yeah, and so another thing that I think is interesting that's been happening that I'm seeing more and more is a lot of times clients will say to us, can you tell me if I have the right people on the bus? Right? And so, yeah, of course we can. But the thing that I'm hearing more lately that I like is sales leaders coming to me and saying, Jane, our business is changing.
Right.
So A, we don't know if we have the right people. Okay. But B, we don't know if we have the right structure. And that's a smart sales leader, right? Because inbound is the favorite child right now. But, I keep saying to people, don't believe the fake news.
Yeah.
Outbound is not dead. Relationships are not dead. Don't believe the fake news, right? So I think too, smart sales leaders are not just saying, do I have the right people? But have I been really clear about roles? Do I have role clarity in my organization? What are the roles I need to have? And what is the structure of our organization? And when you have clarity around those things, it makes it so much easier to hire the right people.
Yeah, I know, I couldn't agree more. And I think that neatly dovetails into the next question, because you just mentioned inbound there a moment ago. And one of the things that has happened a lot over the last while is people have believed the hype, right? And it's nice. I mean, let's face it, it's nice if you think I can kick back here and my inbox will fill up with leads and I don't really have to do anything, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of during the hiring process, what are some of the traits that you need to be able to on the lookout for that may not be the best ones, the ones to avoid? How do you filter out maybe those people who've gotten lazy, who've decided, who bought the hype on, just fill me with leads and I'll close everything, but I'm not going to do anything else. So what are some of the traits you look for, the negative ones, shall we say, that you look for to weed people out?
So I'm going to tell you I'm going to kind of flip your question on you.
Sure.
I'm going to tell you that what will weed out bad salespeople faster than anything is good sales managers.
Very good.
And so you should also be using tools to assess your sales managers and helping them to understand what are the right kind of performance indicators that they should be measuring. I find that too many leaders, period, but sales leaders in particular, are too busy measuring lagging indicators. If you're looking at your quarterly numbers or even your monthly numbers, you are so far behind the curve in terms of figuring out where you're going to be, right? Because that takes too long, John. You need to be measuring the leading indicators that are the behaviors that get you great numbers, right?
Yeah.
So it's as much of a case of doing a great job, using an assessment tool and a great interviewing process on the front end for your candidates, but it balances out very strongly with having a sales leader who is measuring the right stuff at the right time. And if you're doing that, then you are catching those bad behaviors. You're seeing quickly those salespeople that are not performing. You're able to coach and develop people early on, people that are capable of being developed, right? And so you can hire the best salesperson, but if you've got a sales manager who's not measuring the right stuff and not coaching well, just put a great person into a crappy culture. And that's not helpful.
No.
And part of your churn is going to be that they're not going to make it there. They're not going to last there very long, because great salespeople, want to be in a good culture, want to be managed by a great manager.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, then, as we know, sales managers on average last 14 months in most jobs, because again, they're not trained.
Most underdeveloped role in any company anywhere. Yeah.
So before we end today, what's the last bit of advice you would have for people when looking at hiring salespeople? Of course, apart from calling up Jane and getting her to help you.
Well, that's your best solution. In the absence of that, I would say, get everybody on the same page around what is different about salespeople, what that hiring process is going to look like, why it's different from other processes in your organization. How are we going to vet these people early on? And we didn't talk about this, but let's not get caught up on things like, do they have experience in our industry? Who cares, honestly? If you have a person that is a great seller, and you sell rocket fuel, that person could get you to a point to bring a subject matter expert in and close a deal for you. So let's not get caught up on dumb stuff like whether they have experience in our industry, right? Let's focus on the right competencies. Can they sell?
Perfect.
That's what we care about. And then I would say be smart about how you onboard them in your organization.
Yeah, I love that tip that you said earlier about having an onboarding plan in place, because we've all seen at times where, and probably we've all been guilty of it, where we've hired somebody and then said, okay, they start Monday. What are we going to do with them?
Yeah, we've all shown up in that office, right, where there's a desk, a phone, and a computer, and you're like, yay!
Yeah, I'm here. Hello?
I'm here, awesome.
Yeah, and everybody's going, who are you?
Yeah, back when I started selling, I have to tell you, I was the biggest pain in the butt, because I'm not just sit there in that empty office. So I onboarded myself, but I was annoying to everybody, right? Tell me about this, right?
I'm sure you weren't. Okay, so one last thing we like to ask our guests is, what's your power tip? So what do you do every day to set yourself up for success?
Well, to be really frank with you, I am very protective of my quiet time in the morning, whether it's thinking time, devotional time, whatever that is, to get my priorities straight in the day. When you hit the ground running, it can be very easy to think that sales is the most important thing in life, right? And for me, sales is not the most important thing in life. Service is the most important thing in life. And so for me, getting my mindset in terms of my priorities at the very beginning of the day helps me not get so far in the weeds and in the tactics that I lose the big picture about what I'm about, what I care about, what I try to do for my clients.
I love that.
Is that what other people say?
Oh, people come up with all sorts of different things, but I like
That's
that.
my thing. I mean, I have to have my quiet time, my devotional time. I got to get my act together and get my priorities straight. Or I can fall in the trap of thinking sales is like it. Sales is the most important thing ever. And you and I know we make a living at it, but it's not the most important thing.
Right, exactly. And then just before we go, tell people a little bit more about yourself, how they can learn more about you and what you do.
Well, you did a pretty good job at the beginning, but I will say we moved in the last 18 months from enterprise to very intentionally working with more mid-market organizations. We like those relationships. We work in any industry. We're pretty industry agnostic. And hiring is becoming a very big issue for companies because of the talent problem that we have. So we're happy to help with that. You can find us on the website, janegentry.com. You're going to see how easy this is. Twitter @Jane Gentry, LinkedIn Jane M Gentry. I'm pretty sure if you hit Jane Gentry anywhere, you're gonna find me.
Excellent.
So happy to engage with people. I love to engage with them on social media.
Great, perfect. Listen, Jane, this has been a great conversation. I'm sure we'll have you back for another one because there's a few topics we didn't get to today that we could have explored as well. So my name is John Golden, SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine, Pipeliner CRM. My colleague Nicole, who was looking after the Twitter chat, and Jane, wonderful guest. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all for another sales chat really soon.